Prey to me is without a doubt one of the best games I've ever played that never got the respect it deserves. I picked up this game for $20 a few months after release. $20! And I gotta tell you, that was probably the best $20 I've ever spent. From the same studio who brought us Dishonored, you can expect Prey to play in a very similar way if you've played those before. Taking advantage of the levels' verticality, sneaking around, and the always beloved and imaginative supernatural powers. But not only that, the game's world itself is incredibly interesting and filled to the brim with secrets and fun details. Now keep in mind that I've never played the original Prey, so I don't know anything as it relates to that game. But anyway, I want to get right into our discussion of the game, so without further ado, this is Prey. From the setting to the actual levels themselves, the level design of Prey is arguably the game's biggest strength. I mean, just look at Talos 1. It's incredibly cool and so interestingly designed. Is it as good as BioShock's Underwater City or the Metro tunnels and surface of the Metro series? I don't know, but a trans-orbital corporate space station orbiting the moon is pretty cool in its own right. For starters, one of the things about the levels that I really like is the verticality of them all. I mean, some of the rooms are absolutely giant, so big you can fly around in them. Not all of them, obviously, but most rooms have enough height to often fit a second or third floor. And that really adds to the complexity of environments, as well as it allows for the addition of so many different things, from hidden areas to higher vantage points. And going along with this idea of verticality, the levels are designed in such a way that really emphasizes a freedom of approach style of playing, and really rewards the player for exploring. The game gives you so many options on how to navigate its environments. Take this first office space in the game, for example. These are just some random cubicles that you can explore, but your main goal lies ahead, outside of this space. But would you look at that? The door is locked. So the game requires you to do some exploration, and if you look around these offices, not only will you find useful items and fun lore, but more importantly, you'll find the key to that door. But if you have a keen eye and look around the door, you'll notice this hatch in the wall, and if you investigate it, you'll find a shortcut around that door. You don't need that dumb key, you can basically sneak through the vents to reach the other side. And it only gets more complex and fun from here. Take this area for example. The door is blocked by these heavy couches and I can't pick them up yet. I could put useful neuromod upgrades into leverage to lift them, or I could just use this device to compress them and then go in. Or take this security room. I could hack the door and get in that way, but what if I don't have enough hacking skill? Well, you could always break the window and shoot a Nerf dart at the computer to open the door that way. Or how about this? How am I supposed to get in this office? Should I search around and look for the door code? Of course not. I am instead gonna break this window, turn myself into a cup, and then roll myself into there. Yes, you really did just see that. You can turn into a cup in this game. The levels are designed in such a way that there are so many possibilities for exploration and so much freedom given to the player on how they want to approach a situation, and I think it's absolutely incredible. And I haven't even mentioned the glue gun yet. Turning into a cup and squeezing through a tiny gap is fun and all, but the glue gun really gives you a lot of freedom when exploring. One of my favorite spots to use the glue gun is to access Alex's office. You see, you're supposed to go along with the main quest or have max hacking to be able to access this area. But if you're creative enough, you can use the environment and the glue gun to build yourself a platform up there and access it the first time you ever enter the Arboretum, gaining yourself useful neuromods, items, and lore much early on than normal. Or take this lobby area from the beginning of the game. You actually find the glue gun for the first time in this area, and if you're creative enough early on, you can actually access the second floor of this room and grab yourself another weapon so early on in the game. It's an incredibly creative way of giving players the freedom to explore anywhere they want, and I think it's amazing. The level design puts a huge emphasis on exploration as well. I mean, not only is there stuff and hidden rooms and passages everywhere to find, but the levels themselves are all connected in some way and are able to be accessed again at any time. There's a giant lift in the middle of the station that'll take you to the three main areas, but there are also airlocks which allow you to travel anywhere on the station with relative ease and safety. This is great because it gives players the ability to go back and explore previous areas later in the game once they have more knowledge and powers. You know, if you remember there was a safe you wanted to open so long ago, well, the lift and airlocks make backtracking much less of a headache. Additionally, the environmental detail of Talos 1 is some of the best I've ever seen in a video game. I'm not even joking. I feel like I say that a lot, but in this case, it really is true. There is an incredible amount of detail everywhere you look, from personalized desks and offices to unique whiteboards that fit the theme and work environment of where they're located. There are even liquid stains under cups on some people's desks. Many of the degrees have the names of the people who earned them on them, and you can even see all the pixels on computer screens. Furthermore, there's a station-wide D&D group, and you can find their character sheets littered throughout the station. Real care and thought was put into the layout and realness of Talos 1, and this crazy devotion to detail really sells the believability of all the lives of the people working on Talos 1. Every room feels lived in and worked in, and everyone has a place that they should be. And given the fact that every employee aboard Talos 1 has a unique face and voice, it makes finding their office or workspace super satisfying and fun and interesting. It's like, oh hey, it's this guy's office. Didn't I see him laying in a pool of his own blood a few rooms back? And the environmental details aren't there to just sell the believability of the place or provide little cool details, but they also have a place in the gameplay as well. For example, in Dr. Thornstein's office, there's a locked safe, but on the side of it, you'll see he wrote down 2 elements that can be found on the periodic table located across the room. So put in the atomic weight of both those elements, and would you look at that? Opens right up. Now, obviously, this isn't a very difficult code to obtain, as long as you see the note that is, but it's still a satisfying little puzzle to solve that takes advantage of the details in the environment and provides a neat little gameplay experience. So as simple as it is, it's still fun. And speaking of which, the gameplay of Prey is very good. Clunky at times, but still fun. But probably the most interesting aspect of the gameplay are the neuromods. Now, neuromods are basically just upgrade points, allowing the player to upgrade their attributes and add all sorts of new abilities to their tool belt. Using neuromods, you're able to upgrade things in these little RPG-style perk trees. Things like picking up heavier objects, and hacking ability, and making health kits more effective. But there's usually never enough neuromods, and as such, the player has to decide what's more important to them. Do you upgrade your health and make yourself harder to kill? Do you upgrade your inventory size so you can carry more? Or do you simply save the neuromods for something else entirely? This creates an interesting choice for players, especially early game players, since you're going to have to pick one or the other. You can't have it all, at least not for a while. And as we discussed before with the idea of freedom of approach, to make a choice is to lock yourself out of another option for a while. If you put all your mods into hacking so you can access all safes and offices, you're going to neglect other important options like inventory space or repair ability. Or you'll neglect one of the coolest aspects of the gameplay, that being the Typhon-based neuromods. As you progress through the game and scan more and more Typhon creatures, you'll slowly unlock their powers for your own use. I teased it a little earlier with the cup bit, but it can be much, much cooler than that. You're able to spend neuromods on abilities that'll let you do things as simple as setting off a mind explosive, to creating your own gravity lifts, dashing and leaving behind clones, and even just straight up telekinesis. Unlocking these incredible powers opens up so many possibilities and really makes you a force to be reckoned with. And an interesting connection to the title is that in the early game, you are prey to the Typhon, prey to their tricks and physical might. But as you continue to jam these mods into your brain, the roles begin to reverse, and now it's the Typhon that falls prey to you, and basically anything else. And you can really feel it later on. At the beginning of the game, you're just this basic human, but by the end you can run and jump like an Olympic athlete, use your mind to flay enemies, hack your way into anything, fix anything, and so much more. One of the more fun aspects of the gameplay too is deciding how to deal with enemies. The game gives you so many options, even without those crazy Typhon powers. You're able to sneak around and do crit damage, toss explosive canisters at them and blow them up, straight up gun them down, or of course just use psychic powers to destroy them. The possibilities are endless, probably. Now Prey, like many games, allows you to pick up and hoard all the random junk you'll come across aboard Talos 1. But you see, in other games, the hoarding doesn't really lead anywhere. Like, take Skyrim for example. You can grab up and hoard all the weapons and random stuff you find throughout the world, but most of it isn't really useful. I mean, yeah, you can sell it all for gold and buy useful stuff, which is definitely what you should probably be doing, but a lot of the time it'll just sit in Breeze Home collecting dust. But Prey, like Fallout 4, remedies this by giving every item an actual material value that can be used to create new items. How it works is you dump all the items you don't want, like junk or weapons you already have, or basically anything you'd rather have the material for, into the recycler, turn it on, and out comes the actual material that you can collect. Next, you can go over to the fabricator, pick what you want, and bam, you've turned useless trash into useful items. You can find a banana peel or something, crush it into a clump of organic matter, and then turn it into a medkit. Or you can rip a tumor out of a mimic and then turn it into a neuromod and give yourself anti-gravity powers or something else equally insane. And that's one of the best parts of this mechanic. You can begin mass-producing neuromods and really start to ramp up your power in the late game. Unlocking every perk and just becoming a god running around this station, decimating anything that stands before you. It's so fun. The enemy design in Prey is also one of its biggest strengths. The Typhon aren't like normal aliens you'd see in other sci-fi movies or games. They are truly alien and unknowable, and that's what makes them really interesting. They aren't even made out of anything the game recognizes as understandable to us. Instead, their material is described as simply exotic material. They're so alien, what they're made of is even strange. And the way they look is incredibly weird and interesting as well. They're almost shapeless in a way. Like, obviously they have shapes, hitboxes, and recognizable figures, but something about their almost all fluid bodies makes them unnerving and hard to fully understand and comprehend. Now, from a gameplay point of view, I think all of the Typhon are very good and unique. They all act differently from each other, and they all use different methods to try and kill you. Like Phantoms will shoot at you or attempt melee attacks, and what's interesting about them is that sometimes when you damage them, they'll run away and actively hide from you, which is fascinating given how kind of intimidating they are. And the Poltergeists, as the name implies, act like stereotypical ghosts, throwing you and stuff around and messing with the environment in an effort to spook the player. And the last one that I want to give attention to is probably the most interesting of them all, which are the Mimics. The Mimics are great. An enemy that can disguise itself as any item in the game? What a great idea. I love them. You'll just be chilling and then a mimic disguised as like a lemon or something will jump out at you. Now sometimes it's pretty obvious which one is the mimic. Like, come on, 2 chairs at 1 desk? But sometimes it's not so obvious. Take this for example. We're in this room. Which chair do you think is the mimic? Well, if you answered the suspicious chair, you'd be wrong. It's actually the chair the dead guy was sitting in. That's right, he was sitting on the mimic. How long was that chair a mimic that no one noticed when they sat on it? This kind of enemy design is fantastic because it gives you this sense of paranoia for the entire game. At any point, something could be a mimic and just jump out at you, and I often found myself entering a room and immediately thinking to myself, where's the mimics? There has to be 1 or 2 mimics in here with me. I would highly recommend not attaching the scope chip that reveals mimics because it ruins it. Mimics are one of the best enemies in the game, and to spoil it and take away their advantage just makes the game kind of boring, so don't do that. Keep it fun and let them spook you. Also, Prey, like Bioshock, can be kind of scary at times. But the way that Prey does horror is very good compared to many other games in my opinion, because of the fact that the game doesn't rely on cheap tricks to scare you, for the most part. There are jump scares and screamers, but I could probably count the number of jump scares on one hand. Prey instead does a really good job of setting the tone and putting you on edge and creeping you out. As I was just talking about, Typhon are naturally strange and alien, and they do a very good job of being off-putting. The Phantoms, for example, make lights flicker and will often say very odd things that make you question if the person they took over is still in there somewhere, or if the Phantom itself is just replaying its victim's final thoughts or something. It's very unpleasant. And Mimics, like I said, create this sense of paranoia everywhere you go. The Typhon aren't evil or homicidal maniacs like in Bioshock, or these loud and disgusting creatures like in Dead Space, but they're still plenty creepy. I think why I like them in this way is that they're weird enough to be creepy, but not so much to be terrifying. Even when mimics jump out at you, the sound to indicate it isn't super loud or startling. Another way the game goes about setting a horror tone is through specific set pieces. Take for example the first time seeing a phantom at the beginning of the game. It flickers the lights and simply stares at you, like it's studying you before rushing off. This set piece is incredibly unnerving so close to the beginning of the game. Even the way it rushes off is alarming because you don't know if it's going to reappear from around the next corner, since that's the direction it heads off into. Another example is when you're messing with the Mimic and Psychotronics. When you open the last item for it to mimic into, it instead changes into the Yu family portrait, which is a very unnerving thing to witness, and something I did not even know it did until my latest playthrough. I didn't even think the game could freak me out anymore, but it's certainly still got some secrets up its sleeve. The last way the game sets the tone that I want to discuss at least is through the sound design. For starters, I think Prey really nails immersive or atmospheric music and sound. There are so many unnerving and immersive tracks that play in the background to help build tension and keep the player immersed. And another great use of the sound design that I can think of is when you enter the shuttle bay. The shuttle bay doesn't have any oxygen and much of the environment is dark. But the only real sounds you'll hear are the muffled sounds of the Typhon or the environment and the distinct, clear sound of Morgan breathing in their helmet. It's a very claustrophobic kind of experience to be in this dark place, with the sounds of your breath to be the only thing you can hear with clarity. Flying through space is a similar experience. It's all very immersive and nerve-wracking. I really like it. Now, the story of Prey is incredibly rich, with amazing world building, fair warnings of the dangers of unchecked greed and science without limits, while also presenting the player with so many different moral choices and dilemmas. To be honest, I could probably discuss the story and all of its elements for an hour, and that's what makes this section of the video so difficult for me. But what I am choosing to focus on in this video is the idea of trust. To me, trust is one of the more interesting aspects of the game's story. Can you trust your environment, what you see and hear? Can you trust the people around you, and can you even trust yourself? These are questions that come up a lot throughout the whole game. In an amazing twist, and right at the beginning no less, it's revealed that you are being lied to from the very beginning of the game. The truth is you're on a trans-orbital corporate space station orbiting the moon, and you're being held captive in a perpetual Groundhog Day while your brother and colleague continuously wipe your memory and experiment on you. It's an insane way to start your game, and right at the beginning the devs pose this question: is everything really as it seems? And the answer is no. We were stuck in a simulation, there are mimics running around pretending to be things, anyone at any point could be trying to trick you, and most importantly, this place is not safe at all.
You're not safe.
You must always be vigilant, and they teach you this right at the beginning of the game. Talos 1 is a technological marvel where so many different innovations are being created, but Talos 1 is built on lies, and almost all of these innovations are used for nefarious purposes. The neuromods allow humans to rewrite their brains and do incredible things, but the truth is they are being produced by using human beings as cattle. The Looking Glass seems amazing, but is used in conjunction with the neuromod's Mind Wipe to trap you indefinitely in the sim lab. And even in the hardware labs, we learn that TranStar is secretly developing military operators. Nothing is as simple as it seems, and the game reinforces this idea over and over again. Additionally, the game wants you to question the motives, actions, and thoughts of those around you, and if you blindly put your trust in people, the game's gonna punish you. And I think this is seen really well through the Cook. Now, the Cook is clearly not who he says he is. He doesn't recognize Morgan, the literal vice president of TranStar. He matches the general description of a Russian volunteer, and if you explore and pay attention, you'll notice that the real Cook looks and acts nothing like this guy. Look, it's completely obvious that this fake Cook is full of it, and he's clearly just a Russian volunteer running loose in the station. But if you choose to trust him, He not only tries to get you killed by luring you into a phantom, but if you choose to trust him again, he will just try to kill you himself by locking you in the freezer. Anyway, what I'm saying is that the game doesn't want you to blindly trust people and just follow along without questioning what is happening. It wants you to ask questions, and it wants you to actively try to pursue the truth, or at the very least see through the lies. Because the lies aboard Talos 1 are a whole lot deeper and complex than this extremely sketchy cook. And that brings me to one of the biggest questions of all in Prey. Can you even trust yourself? Throughout the game, we learn that January is just a singular snapshot of Morgan. And this Morgan has decided that Talos 1 in its entirety needs to be blown up. The lies, corruption, and horrific experiments need to meet a definitive and fiery end. But there is another version of Morgan out there, the operator December, and it thinks that you should escape Talos 1 and tell the world of what's going on aboard the station. And then there's Alex, who is following the original Morgan's belief that the advanced null wave device can be used to save the station and all of its research. January, December, and Alex. 3 different arbiters of Morgan's will at 3 different times, and none of them can agree. But there is one more Morgan, us, the player, and we have to make a choice.
Strangely, of all the things I know about you, I don't know what you believe. You have to decide, Morgan. Who are you?
Can we trust Alex and the original Morgan? Is saving this research really worth it knowing how it was gathered? Or what about December? Should we really just abandon everyone aboard the station? And lastly, what about January? It's the most prominent and present of the 3, but how do we know blowing up the station is the right choice, or that the explosion really will even destroy the Typhon? Each of their positions are understandable from a certain point of view, and each have major flaws. I mean, it's no surprise that the original Morgan wants to use the null wave device. They're as crazy as Alex is when it comes to their unchecked scientific endeavors. And it's no surprise that January wants to blow everything up. I mean, the neural mods are made by sacrificing human beings, for God's sakes. Morgan's therapy sessions are proof enough of their disgust and horror of what's going on aboard Talos 1.
You agreed to this. This was all your idea. Yours and Alex's.
I didn't agree to any of this, alright? That Morgan is not me. I would never... Do you know what's going on in Psychotronics? Do you?
But in the end, in a typical playthrough that is, it all comes down to Alex versus January. Well, more so it's Morgan versus Morgan. Morgan devised the plan for the null wave device, just as they devised the plan to blow everything up. But the question arises, can you trust that if you use the null wave, that TranStar or some other company won't just start the research back up again? And January makes a good point that the demand for neuromods will only increase, and Alex is still convinced that the human sacrifices are worth it to achieve progress and success. But like I said, can you trust that blowing up the station will destroy the Typhon and the research along with them? And all that's left to do is decide. Who do you trust? Which option fits more into your morals and philosophies? Or perhaps do you even trust yourself to make the right call? Is saving all this research, knowing that it was the product of unhinged science that completely disregarded any sort of ethics or morals, worth it? Or did the experiments here go so far to the point that none of it should be allowed to even exist? The fact that the game gets me asking these questions is what's so great about Prey's story to me. There is good reasons for both, and major drawbacks to both, and it really gets you thinking about your own morals and thoughts on it all. And on that note, that brings us to the real ending of Prey. It is revealed at the end that the entire game was a simulation designed to neuromod a Typhon with the human ability of empathy by giving them mirror neurons. And even at the end, Alex, who is much older, asks you to trust him and to believe in humanity.
We spent years trying to put what you can do into us. We never tried putting what we can do into you. Until now.
Even after everything we witnessed aboard Talos 1, can you, as a Typhon, forgive him and move forward? If you killed Alex during the game, he will even remark that he doesn't blame you and that he would have done the same thing to himself.
Alex, it killed you.
Back then, her would have done the same thing to me.
And as a Typhon Phantom, we get one final choice. Do you forgive humanity, even with all their flaws? Or do you just finally put an end to it all?
We're gonna shake things up, like old times.
They really did something very right with the story of this game. So many questions come up as you play, and there's a crazy amount of discussion and theories people have regarding the world and the characters and what really happened aboard Talos 1. We will probably never know, but the amount of discussion really shows how much this game's story piqued people's interest. And as I said before, the story is incredibly complex, so forgive me if I missed anything that you think was crucial to the discussion. And please feel free to add your thoughts in the comments. I really would love to hear your thoughts on this all. And thanks for watching the video. I really do think that Prey is one of the all-time greats. Great gameplay, fantastic level design, an absolutely amazing story, and so much more. And its DLC Moon Crash is a great part 2 in lieu of a proper sequel. To be honest, my only real problems with the game are the few bugs that I encountered, and for the fact that a few of the endings feel kind of like they end abruptly. I'm sure that there's more problems that I didn't see, but for the most part, I think the game's put together really well. And I don't know what the future holds for the people who worked on Prey, but all I can say is thank you for making this game such a wonderful experience. And for anyone that hasn't played the game yet, I cannot recommend it enough. Now, do yourself a favor and go play the game. Go experience it, and hurry! Thanks everyone. See you next time.